Let's go! New Energymaxxing video. And for this one, I want to tell you about one of my latest projects. There was a point, maybe about 2 years ago, when I decided I had enough. I was in my supposed peak performance age, but I didn't have the energy. I was often tired, lazy and not motivated at all. The following months I implemented a few habits and made some lifestyle changes for better health and energy. And fortunately it started to improve. A lot of it worked, but I wanted to learn more. I wanted to dive deeper. What does the actual science say? What do we really know about energy and vitality? This was something that really interested me and I wanted to find out. And since then I've probably read about 100 studies on energy, health and testosterone. I didn't count them, to be honest with you, but I'm pretty sure I'm very close. So in this video I want to share the most important things I've learned, what the key lessons are and how this can actually help you. Also what some common misconceptions are and some good ways to boost your energy. I hope that sounds interesting, so let me explain. And to do this, I want to start off with just some quick takeaways for you, but also some basic knowledge before we get more specific towards the end. So for one, about 20 to 45% of the US population is actually persistently fatigued. And that was in 2018, and they even say the number is very likely also underreported.
Oh shit!
So potentially it can easily go up to 50%, which means that every other person experiences some level of persistent fatigue, which is crazy. And also those numbers are only rising. Because I mean, the environment we're living in just makes it harder and harder to be healthy and to be energetic if you don't actively do something about it. You probably know this. For example, testosterone levels too have been dropping for decades by now.
It's not looking good, bruv.
And I quickly want to talk about this because testosterone actually plays a big role in energy, especially for us men. A survey of men in the US and their experiences on testosterone prescription even found that more people felt an increase in energy when they got testosterone instead of libido or muscle mass. So it does play quite a big role in our energy. And again, to give you some takeaways, here are some ways to increase testosterone that I've read about in those studies. For example, something you might not have heard about before, unless you watched my latest video of course, is that pomegranate juice actually increased the testosterone in the participants in a study by about 24% in just a couple weeks. Now, the research on this is quite limited, but there was also no conflict of interest or external funding, which makes it quite reliable. It is assumed it's because of the antioxidants which help to protect your Leydig cells. But on top of that, the pomegranate juice also led to better mood and improved anxiety. Also, I've seen different studies about boron, magnesium, vitamin D, omega-3, zinc and iron to positively impact your testosterone. And also, especially for overweight or obese people, going into a caloric restriction can actually boost testosterone too. But prolonged caloric restriction for normal weight men actually decreases testosterone. Now, another great way to boost testosterone is for one, definitely competition or also working out, which is also a very big thing when it comes to energy. For example, a study has found a 65% reduction in fatigue for inactive people when a low-intensity exercise routine was introduced. Also, it increased their energy by 20%. But also again, other studies claimed that exercise actually increases energy more than it reduces fatigue. And actually, I found this quite interesting. Most studies on improving energy naturally seem to go to exercise. But at the same time, I must say, it has also been proven to be a smart move, because exercise does increase energy. Now, how much will vary of course, but especially overweight or out of shape people can really benefit a lot from this. Also, a study of 226 twin pairs and 38 siblings also found that energy changes in response to moderate exercise were also influenced by genetic factors. So of course your genes, your DNA plays a role too, but very importantly, changes in fatigue were not influenced by genetic factors. I don't really understand why, but I also didn't find any other studies about exactly that, so maybe one day we will learn that's actually not true. But this is also a point where we get into a whole discussion I did not expect at first. Fatigue is not the absence of energy, and having energy is not the opposite of feeling fatigue. There's actually a big discussion about this, and the lack of a perfect definition or uniformly standard surveys to evaluate those things, energy and fatigue, makes it a lot harder to compare study results. So maybe a 20% increase in study A for energy, for example, does not mean the same thing for a 20% increase in another study. We can't objectively measure fatigue or energy, and we rely on surveys. And of course, these are subjective. These can easily be influenced by bias or placebo. And the surveys they use to evaluate energy and fatigue actually have different formats, different questions and other stuff that just really makes it hard to compare one to the other. Unless of course they use the same format. But there's no one standard, which makes it a bit complicated. And again, lack of energy does not mean you feel fatigue. And no fatigue does not mean you have energy. For example, a meta-analysis of 16 exercise studies found that vigorous intensity exercise increases energy but does not decrease fatigue. And also they say decreases in fatigue occur only when post-exercise increases in energy are at least moderately large after low to moderate intensity exercise lasting longer than 20 minutes.
Bro, what are you talking about, man?
So to put simply, if a chilled cardio session really kicks in for you, then fatigue decreases too. Which again will depend on weight, genes, general health, diet and many other factors too. Also, for example, this study found that seasonal changes in fatigue can exist while there are no seasonal changes in energy. Or weirdly, this study with 30,000 participants in 21 countries found that red wine is more fatiguing than white wine. Yeah. Or most importantly, I think, coffee or caffeine increases energy but does not or barely does reduce your fatigue. So while coffee may give you energy short term, it does not fix an underlying issue of fatigue and probably only makes it worse in the long term. Or lastly, this study found, for example, that breakfast with simple carbs was more fatiguing than complex carbs, but no difference in energy. And remember how I said earlier that fatigue is becoming more and more common and it's harder and harder to actually be healthy and to thrive because of our environment? This is another example for that. Simple carbs become a more and more common thing as our diet low-key gets worse. Also, caffeine consumption is rising too. Or even depression, which also increases fatigue. Although the authors here said selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors such as fluoxetine, paroxetine or sertraline may improve energy in patients with depression.
Nice.
And of course, you and I don't want fatigue. Of course, it's the obvious lack of energy or motivation or thrive that will reduce the quality of life and of our mood. And good health is characterized by physical and psychological well-being and is also associated with vitality. But there is even more to it. For example, fatigue is linked to increased risk of cardiac events. Individuals with chronic fatigue report poorer mental health than their non-chronic fatigue counterparts, and current medications or treatments for fatigue are inconsistent and quote-unquote not overwhelmingly successful, especially with long-term usage. And also, unexplained fatigue is 3 times more present than explained fatigue due to injury, illness, whatever, which I found quite interesting. So it seems like we don't really know too much about fatigue. do we? But of course, I do get it's a very complex topic. It is subjective, like I said, affected by bias or placebo when we do actual studies, and the lack of a uniform standard makes it harder to understand and really work with it too. But this could become a long discussion at this point. There are still definite things that have been proven to improve your vitality. And I quickly want to give you a few takeaways that may help you personally, because I want to provide some actual value for you. So elevated dopamine and norepinephrine transmission and binding increases motivation, which generally increases energy. So do focus on dopamine management, which I could make a video about too. Just leave a comment. And also, fatigue could be increased by elevated brain serotonin. So put simply, dopamine for energy, serotonin against fatigue. Probably oversimplified a bit, but I think it's not wrong. Also, when it comes to mental energy specifically, vitamin C concentration was positively associated with levels of attention, but no significant impact on fatigue and mood. Omega-3 improves memory and cognition in young adults, but also not very much. Additionally, it increases the size of your balls. And also, very importantly, but you probably know this, a sedentary lifestyle sucks. Like, it really fucks up your energy. Truth. Sitting at desks, watching television, playing video games, etc. are all very bad for fatigue and energy, but actually also have been found to have a stronger tendency to decrease energy than to increase fatigue. Kinda interesting too. Then also, short naps are proven performance enhancers. There's a lot of positive evidence for short naps, and I'm really starting to think more again about whether I should do more naps. But especially if you lack energy, a quick nap can be really powerful. Also, it is recommended that a treatment for all types of fatigue should include a structured plan for regular physical activity, aka working out, that consists of stretching and aerobic exercise such as walking. So guys, as I always say, leave your room, go for walks, exercise, those kind of things. But also, very interestingly, this study actually concluded that guided mindfulness is actually more effective than self-chosen aerobic exercise when it comes to enhancing vitality and maintaining the improvements, which is also really interesting. However, the authors also write about how results and interpretations on this topic are quite mixed, but it still should show you that mindfulness is actually very important and has its own place, deservedly so. In general, I think a lot of these studies also have proven my concept of the 7 pillars of high energy, which, to be fair, is also kind of based on books and studies, but focusing on these can really increase your energy. But if you want to learn more about that, I just made a video about that here. Or for more advice on increasing your testosterone, check out this one. And then I hope you learned something from this video. I kind of wanted to compromise everything I learned and not make it too theoretical or too boring. But yeah, let me know what you think of it, and then have a great day. Stay excellent. Bye.